Good evening, everyone. Come on, y'all could do better than that. We're at a TED Talk, guys. Good evening. Okay, that's better. I like that. My name is Dorian Murray Thomas, and today I'll be talking about the journey and the power of rewriting the current narratives of resilience radically. So I had a best friend growing up, and her name was Amber. Amber and I did everything together. We went to church together, school together, got in a little bit of trouble at school together, posted awkward pictures and videos on MySpace. The average things that teens and tweens do. Amber lived with her grandmother. Her parents loved her dearly, but because of their battles with the drug addiction and different things affecting cities like Newark, they weren't able to raise her. My mom was a public school teacher and social worker here in Newark, but was also a single parent. When I was 7 years old, my dad was gunned down on his way to pay my school tuition here in Newark, 2 blocks from our house. And so Amber and I had a lot of things in common. We had people who loved us, even in the midst of the things that we went through. But there were some supports that Amber didn't get and that I was lucky enough to get. And so by the time when we were going to high school and coming of age, some of the distractions that we see in cities like Newark became bigger and louder and louder. And while I had the supports to focus in on my goals, which were school and having fun, Amber got distracted, like a lot of kids do, and ultimately decided to drop out of high school. Luckily, though, she went back. And so by the time that I was graduating college, she was actually graduating high school too, finally getting her diploma. But she was getting it from inside of a prison. Amber and I were unknowingly a part of a club that no one really wants to be in. And that's a club called People Affected by Trauma. And surprisingly, it was a club much bigger than you would think. Nearly half of all children in the United States will be affected by some form of adverse childhood experience. Let me say that again. That's almost 50% of people by the time they turn 17 will experience some form of trauma. When you look at the data even closer, though, in cities like Newark and Chicago and other cities that have amazing, brilliant, resilient people, but also struggling with a lack of resources and disinvestment, there are estimates that between 70 and 100% of young people are exposed to trauma chronically. 70 and 100%. Some of the risks of trauma are pretty severe. When trauma goes untreated, you can be more likely to drop out of high school, engage in at-risk behaviors. But the data also shows that when you have protective supports and protective factors in place, like strong mentorship opportunities, like new learning opportunities to learn and have fun and bond with people, both in your own peer group and different strong relationships with adults, all those risk factors that you were traditionally at risk of, you actually end up becoming mitigated because you have those other protective factors in place. It's commonly known as resilience, right? This focus of making sure that we ensure that all of our kids, particularly those who are exposed to the worst of the world, have the internal resilience to persevere and keep going. And it's something that as Americans, we tend to hold dear culturally. This idea that if you keep going, if you keep working hard, you can pull yourself up from your bootstraps. You can accomplish the American dream. And we make movies about it, books about it. Every time when this college application season, we see on Instagram or in the news, young people who had to endure extraordinary difficult things, from being homeless, but still submitting college applications and getting into the top schools, everything from enduring abuse and still getting into schools. We actually celebrate it culturally, right? Because our kids, even in the midst of their challenges, they still won. So we know that it pays off, and we see that it doesn't just pay off for that individual who shows the resilience, but the organizations and institutions and communities they belong to. There's one study done by Bloomberg that looks at some of their analysts, particularly their analysts who are first-generation college students, and it shows that they often not only meet the criteria of excellence of some of their other analysts, but they often exceed that. There's a famous venture capitalist a lot of people are familiar with, who's one of my personal sheroes, Arlen Hamilton, whose venture capitalist firm is particularly investing in entrepreneurs who come from some of the most underestimated populations, minorities, LGBTQ folks, women, because she believes that even though groups are underestimated, they are still capable of excellence and brilliance. And that when we level the playing field, right, those who have often had to do more with less actually have something really unique and brilliant to offer both the entrepreneur space and society at large. But the question I want to pose for us today is resilience alone enough? I would argue it's not. While it's important that we have folks, and children in particular, who have to endure the worst of the world, be resilient and be strong, that won't suffice if we don't have systems and environments that also cultivate that brilliance and that make it so that they don't have to be so doggone strong in the first place. We need what I call a radical resilience, one that fosters both individual and systemic change. There's a quote that says that if a flower is wilting, you don't blame the flower, you try to fix the environment. All of us need that individual push to get to that next level, but we also need those systematic supports that will actually get us to that level playing field and to optimize our excellence. So when I was 19, I took a stab at starting this myself. As I shared earlier, I lost my dad to gun violence here in the city of Newark, but I knew that my story didn't end there. And part of the reason why my story didn't end there was because I had such amazing people in my family, like my mother, like my mentors, and my school teachers, who made sure I saw the best in myself, even in the worst of times. And so I created an organization called She Wins that focuses on just that, making sure that young women are empowered to become the next generation of college, career, and community-ready young women leaders. And we were doing pretty awesome stuff. We were running our summer leadership program this particular summer, and we had 15 girls. This is my first time starting this, sophomore at Swarthmore College. And I mean, we would just leave those rooms with a light. At the end of every day, there was a buzz, there was a magic. And not only did all the staff and volunteers feel it, but you saw it in the kids' eyes. But then something really interesting would happen with some of the girls. Some of them would keep that light throughout the summer, throughout the course of the school year. And then some of them, for them, it would dim. And when we wondered and asked ourselves why, the reality was that they still had to leave. And sometimes on the way home from school, you could be threatened by gunshots, people driving past you who didn't always say the nicest things and make you feel safe or comfortable. They would be brilliant up here, but sometimes go to schools where you have teachers and staff who love them, who care about them, but don't always have enough money in their budget to give them adequate materials. And so you would see these talent and these gifts and this light that the girls already came into our space with and that their communities and their homes had already nurtured, sometimes be stifled and thwarted by the systems and environment that wasn't built for their brilliance. And so we said, you know what? It's really good that our girls get to come here and feel great about themselves. They get to feel empowered. We do all these art projects and vision boards and things to make our girls know that they are capable of any and everything they put their mind to. But we also have to do a little bit more. What if we took it a step further and created a space for them to actively disrupt the things and the issues that most affect their lives and their communities? And so we started reaching out to folks, different organizations and companies here in the city of Newark, and we said, hey, we have this group of amazing young women who literally want to be the change. They see an issue, they're thinking about how they can fix it, they know the issue really well because you know what, if it hasn't affected them, it affected their neighbor, their cousin, a family member. And so they're intimately connected with them. Can we work together to create a space where they can actually execute a vision for this? And so a lot of folks said, yeah, let's do it. And so we partnered with different organizations where our girls at 12, 13, 14 years old got to do things like helping combat the issues with early childhood literacy by going and reading to young people here in the city of Newark regularly to improve their reading levels. They did things like not only rebuilding their community, but literally repainting and redecorating and re-beautifying the same schools they went to as kids. They would become peer mentors to each other. Not only receiving mentorship from our staff and our volunteers, but they would mentor the middle school students or early high school students just a little bit below them. Or not only at 11 years old, studying major issues like poverty and mass incarceration or domestic violence, but actually going to places like Capitol Hill to speak with legislators, to actually be the advocates for the change that they wanted to see. And so, what happened when young people were able to literally create the solutions to the issues they knew most affected their lives and communities? Everyone won. Because we know that when she wins, we win. Or when anyone who has experienced something difficult, trying, comes out victorious in the end, it benefits everyone around them. And so I love this because it wasn't just me who got to have the privilege of overcoming my own struggles, right? And having the supports to be resilient, but I also got to see young people be resilient too. And I got to see them being resilient and creating the change they wanted to see. A couple months ago, I got the chance to take it even further. And I heard about an opportunity to be able to advocate for kids at a greater level here in the city of Newark. And I said, you know what? I'm gonna go for it. So I decided to run for school board here in my great city, and it turned out I actually won. They wanted me. And without even knowing that this would happen, I became a maker of history, the youngest woman at 23 years old in the history of our school board to be elected into office. And so now I get really, really lucky, guys, because I not only get to work with my amazing young women who I've seen literally some since they were up to my hip, now up here serving as college mentors, which I actually think I see one in the audience. Hey, April. But not only do I get to see them thrive, but I get to work collectively with parents, teachers, administrators, students for over 36,000 young people in the city of Newark to make sure that all of our kids have an educational ecosystem that brings out the best in them, that not only focuses on the 3 R's, the reading, writing, and arithmetic, because those are important, but that also work to educate the whole child and help to make sure that we're not only empowering our young people to endure the challenges that they go through, but help erase them from a systematic level. And so, ladies and gentlemen, today we're left with a little bit of a charge. And the charge won't be easy, but it's fairly simple. The charge means that we have to start calling our children more than strong. We have to stop creating so many situations where they have to be so strong and resilient in the first place, because it's not normal. The world doesn't need more Ambers. The world doesn't need more young men who took my father's life, because I often wonder how different his life would have been if he had the supports, the mentors in his life to make him know that his manhood wasn't defined by a gun. We have the expectation for our children and our children's children to do more, because our kids are more than just strong, right? And we must teach them that. They're disruptors, they're game changers, they're trailblazers, they're leaders. So let's call them by their name. And not only empower them to be those disruptors and those game changers, but we have to work hand in hand, side by side with them to disrupt any system that tries to get in their way. So be that from whatever way we see our space at doing this work, be it in our classrooms, our boardrooms, conference rooms, or sometimes even our own homes, that means we have to start having really disruptive conversations. This means we have to have radical conversations and actively work to make sure that we are creating radical change from the ground up. Because it's not enough to build resilient kids. We have to build resilient institutions and systems that nurture them so they can become the disruptors and the leaders of the systems that will come after them. And so, I know it sounds like a lot of work, and it is, but I'm really happy because you've already started to answer the call by being here today. There's 3 things you can do to start continuing doing the work. One is connect with other people who are already doing these things that you're passionate about. If there are ways that you see people being radically, disruptively resilient, partner with their organizations, go to them, talk to them, become a mentor, or say, hey, I think I can learn from you. 2, find different ways to actually collaborate. Everyone has a gift. Everyone has something brilliant that they have to offer, even if you think that you don't. And so find a way to work with someone to make sure that that happens, be it a local organization and community, a company that you work with or are a part of, or anyone or anything that you know is making the change today. And then third, start the conversation. Educate yourself more on how we can work collectively to be disruptors. Thank you, and let's answer the call together.